And we really want to help improve people's mental and cognitive performance now and in the long term. We're not knife fighting, doing another $2 kombucha.
What got you into the brain science and nootropics, the business of improving what I would have thought is pretty hard to improve, which is the intelligence you're given versus something like athletes that you can improve how fast you run or how well you can play a round of golf. How do you do that for a muscle within the human body that you can't see?
So for us, it's working with literally the world's best. So I spend a lot of time researching and understanding at a high level and at a kind of dumb consumer level how nutrition can affect cognition and neurological performance and neurological health. And through my research and through the recommendation of leading scientists and researchers in New Zealand, there were a lot of signs pointing towards this professor in Melbourne, and he has undertaken and published kind of a very large chunk of the literature out there to date around the effects of natural compounds, psychopharmacology, and their effects on the brain, and kind of learning from, and his name is Professor Andrew Scoley, and essentially he's proving that various compounds that are found in nature can actually improve different aspects of mental performance and neurological health and mood. And so our mission is to enhance the brain in the modern world using powerful ingredients found in nature, but more specifically found in New Zealand. And we really want to help improve people's mental and cognitive performance now and in the long term, and really kind of bridge that gap between food and medicine. 1 in 6 people worldwide suffer from a neurological concern, and whether that's something as small as short-term anxiety or through to more chronic conditions such as depression or dementia or Alzheimer's. And people are looking more for nutrition solutions to help them on their journeys. And so I guess for me, it's something that's, really interesting, and it's almost one of the last frontiers in nutrition. And I was almost challenged when I kind of thought of the idea to produce the world's smartest beverage about 7 years ago. And, a few friends would kind of scoff at me and laugh and going, you can't make something that can make someone smarter. You can't make a beverage that can make someone smarter, Angus. And I kind of saw that as a challenge. And so, we've been chipping away and working with very intelligent people and really amazing New Zealand ingredients, which I can talk about later, that produce some pretty interesting results.
There's a lot we'll cover there, and we'll go into detail on probably 2 or 3 topics there: the science of it, the natural ingredients that are New Zealand, and also the practical side of it, which is how does it work. But seeing I've got the mic, I'm going to ask you a question for my own personal intelligence reasons and what I already do. So I like to have a good night's sleep, and I like to have coffee in the morning after that sleep, and I feel awake and alert, and I can do the complex problems. I do that earlier on in the day, and then the simpler email type transactional tasks I'll do later. What are some of the things that are at play there, either from a positive or a negative aspect, to do with that alertness and ability to solve problems?
So from my understanding, and I am not a neuroscientist, so I won't be able to answer it as well as our chief science officer, but essentially your brain is better at processing the chunkier tasks in the morning, because you essentially have a finite amount of energy to expand each day before your brain then needs to sleep at a period later. And so the longer that you stay awake, the more you're expanding your cognitive energy. And so your tank is essentially depleting. And when you have a well-rested brain that hasn't taken on too much of a cognitive load, you are more able to do the more complex tasks earlier on. And the later you leave it, the harder those tasks are to efficiently execute. When you include coffee into that mix, so caffeine is a really good stimulant for keeping you alert and improving things like alertness. It provides there's a dopamine hit, and then there's a change in your blood pressure. It gets your heart pumping more, and so you feel a rush of energy that it helps you to do the things that you want to tackle. So our mission is to not replace coffee, but what we've found is that during and before really big moments in people's lives, such as an interview or an exam or a wedding speech, those moments are often met with nervousness and anxiety and stress. And in times of stress, people turn to food, but traditionally they've been turning to the wrong food for that peak performance moment, and they often turn to caffeine to help them get through it. But what they forget about is that caffeine can sometimes exacerbate your stress and anxiety. And so what we've tried to produce and slowly proving is something that can not only improve your mental performance, but also keep you calm and thinking clear under that moment of high pressure. So that's kind of, the aspect of where we come from and we tackle. So, but everyone loves coffee. Well, a lot of people love coffee, and it's something that's never going to be replaced. But we think that the world is almost over caffeinated, and I came from a background of, my first job was selling energy drinks, and it just didn't really agree with me. And so we're not here to replace your morning coffee, but we're certainly here to look at replacing your afternoon coffee or your afternoon energy drink.
What would a diet that included Ārepa nootropics look like in terms of either the drink or the food aspect? When would someone be wanting to take it? Is it additive over time, or is it something that happens before the key event? Like, what's the recommended behavior that goes along with the product?
Yeah, so we have two different customer subsets. So one side of our customer group, and we take a lot of data from our customers through various means, and the thousands of consumers now, tens of thousands of consumers now that take us, half of them take us for a performance moment. And so we class a performance moment into kind of three groups. You have your students before, exams or studying. You have your corporate professionals before an interview or a board report or a presentation or a busy meeting. And then you have your sports people before, a sports match or, your elite sport. And so they all require a serving from us once to help them perform better immediately, 20 minutes after consumption. What we found is that they really need something that can improve their mental performance instantly. And so we spent a lot of time developing a beverage initially, but then our smoothie powder and our capsules to actually deliver a real-time felt effect to those consumers, within about a 20 to 30 minute sitting. And the reason why, energy drinks and coffee and alcohol and cigarettes are so successful is because people can feel those effects straight away. And it's actually really, really hard to develop something that can produce a felt effect but that's natural, caffeine-free, safe, plant-based, you know, good for you. And so we're on that journey, but we've found a combination that we've patented that can do that. The other side, the other 50% of our consumers are we like to call the maintenance side. And this is that 1 in 6 people, you know, 1 in 6 people around the world, they have a problem with their brain. And so whether it's, you know, ongoing dementia or concussion recovery or stroke recovery or depression, you know, they have this problem that never leaves them, and it has to do with their brain. And so they really need us on a daily basis, something like us on a daily basis, to help them, you know, get through each day. And so that's why we developed our smoothie powder. And what we've found is that the more they have a neurostressor, the bigger the felt effect that they can feel from us. And we get these, like, you know, kind of, you know, tear-jerking, heartwarming testimonies from people emailing or calling or texting or writing to us on Instagram or Facebook saying, you know, my husband has just had a stroke and he is a better man when he's consuming, you know, Ārepa versus days without, or, you know, I have chronic fatigue or depression, and I feel like my brain fog is completely cleared. And you kind of know that you're on the right track when you get, you know, people submitting these things to you. So we feel good about that, and it's definitely in line with some of the science that we're starting to uncover and that's starting to be published, which is really good. And to answer your question around the additive effect, there was a recent study on the one-off versus the long-term consumption of a couple of our ingredients, and there are both acute, which is short one-term, but also chronic, which is that long-term benefits. And it's not like it gets depleted, it's more like it builds up, and it is an additive cumulative benefit. But I think the reason why we're gaining momentum is because we produce that instantaneous effect more concentrated in those who have the higher neurostressor.
That's fascinating. So I can see where the positioning of this sits. It's, you know, food is medicine for the brain, for those that want to keep on top of things in higher stress moments, like potentially an interview or wedding or exam moment, or for those that have an underlying condition which is depleting that cognitive ability, either through a health effect or potentially through a depletion or the presence of a toxin, potentially a neurotoxin. So I can see where this now fits. Where does it fit in terms of nature? Like, where would you find these ingredients if you weren't shopping at the supermarket or at a cafe and you see the bottle of Ārepa? That's one way of finding them. But how did you find them? Because, you know, nature's got a lot to provide, particularly within the New Zealand context. Where did you start?
So we Google, but we basically went to the person that knew the most about this in this space, and this was Professor Andrew Scoley. So he's the Centre Director for Human Psychopharmacology at Swinburne University in Melbourne, and he's published over 240 peer-reviewed journal articles of the effects of natural compounds affecting cognition and mood. And so we convinced him. I spent about 3 months politely hustling him to see how much it would cost for him to develop a formula for us that could not only increase mental performance, but also reduce stress at the same time. And then on top of that, be good for your brain and protect your brain in the long term. And then lastly, if he could at least include one ingredient from New Zealand that was unique to New Zealand, then it would be great, so that we could vertically integrate with that supply chain and have a unique story, so that when we go onto the world stage, we had something that was unique to New Zealand. And so he came back a number of months later, and developed this very kind of thick dossier of evidence. And so essentially our formula has 3 key ingredients. One is a unique New Zealand blackcurrant that we call Neuroberry. So there's a lot of evidence that, berries, especially blueberries, have benefits towards, neuroprotection and protecting against. There's a recent study around a higher intake of blueberries, apples, and tea had a protective benefit against Alzheimer's over a 20-year period, and it was in quite a high-ranking journal. And the reason why blueberries are so good for you is because of the color, the antioxidants, the color in them. And what a lot of people don't know is that New Zealand blackcurrants have got almost exponentially higher levels of color versus blueberries, and they have even more vitamin C than, say, kiwi fruit or an orange. And not many people know that. So they really are a superfruit and kind of like an unsung hero of New Zealand produce. And so we've identified a unique variety that we call Neuroberry that is shown to increase mental performance under when people are physically fatigued. And what we find really interesting about it is that it has a particular ability to inhibit an enzyme that's active in the brain, and it's even more active in those who have, say, depression or Parkinson's. And this enzyme essentially chews up neurotransmitters such as dopamine and serotonin, and it oxidizes in the brain. And people with these conditions have really high levels of this enzyme oxidation. And what this berry does is that it inhibits that enzyme from working, and it stops it from chewing up your neurotransmitters. And it's working just as well as some of the leading anti-depression and anti-Parkinson's medications can, on a benchtop scale. And so the work that we're doing now is actually translating this into human studies, where we're going to show that this berry has a neuroprotective and mood-boosting benefit at a kind of a therapeutic level. So you can find them. A lot of the blackcurrants in New Zealand are primarily grown in the South Island around Canterbury. So we've brought on one of the largest blackcurrant growers in the country. So he's a shareholder in our company, and it gives us a really great story of from farm to table, of where the blackcurrants are grown, how they're grown, and how we process them and get them to consumers, to the supermarket shelves. So that's really great. And then the second key ingredient to us, and that's unique to New Zealand, is a pine bark extract, and that's used traditionally here in New Zealand as a natural alternative to Ritalin for ADHD children, and used in high doses for concussion recovery and stroke recovery. It essentially helps to increase blood flow and oxygen into the brain. And so when the brain has more oxygen, it can perform better. It'd be like giving your car racing engine fuel instead of regular 91. It's cleaner burning, more efficient, and can operate better. And so, it's the byproduct of the timber industry. And you need about 100 kilos to make 1 kilo of this extract, which sells for close to $800 a kilo, and it tastes horrible. So we had to work with clever natural flavor scientists to help mask the bitterness and astringency. But again, we've vertically integrated with the company that produces this really amazing ingredient. And they're called Enzo Nutraceuticals, and the ingredient is called exogenol. And it helps a lot of people throughout New Zealand. And our goal is to, spread the word of it more internationally now and use it in food format. So that's the second ingredient. And then the third ingredient that makes up our patent is L-theanine, and that's a rare amino acid that's traditionally found in green tea. And essentially this amino acid is proven to reduce anxiety and stress without making you drowsy. And it's really effective in people with high amounts of anxiety and stress. And what we like about it is that it can actually counter the negative effects of caffeine, such as that systolic blood pressure change. And so you could essentially, have something like us after too many coffees and notice yourself becoming calmer again. So we like to think of ourselves as that savior, that kind of combination between rescue remedy and Ribena for a key busy moment. But we wanted to make something that was, plant-based, so it means it was sustainable. We wanted it to be safe and natural and healthy. So we had to kind of select ingredients that really came from, food and plant compounds that had the ability to scale and were available to the masses.
Hey, just a quick interruption. Thanks for watching a Kiwi original. If you're liking this episode, then hit the notification button, and that means you'll see when every new episode gets released. We've done 40 already. We've got another 50 lined up. Right, now back to the episode. It's certainly an area that is getting a lot more attention. The natural-based native plant derivatives as a form of medicine. We had Dr. Sandra Clare as a previous interviewee on the A Kiwi Original show, and she was speaking about thyme and the medicinal properties of thyme. She's originally from Switzerland, and through her research-backed science work, she discovered that the thyme that comes out of New Zealand, specifically around her where she lives in Canterbury, is 3 times the nutrient or active ingredient properties of international available thyme, specifically from her home country in Switzerland. And one of the things that she raised, and I want to ask you the same question, is that within New Zealand we're very good at the regulatory environment with pharmaceuticals, but there is currently no regulation to make plant-derived medicine available for export in a regulated way. And so although she's done this research and you can buy the thyme product, and there's a growth in export or tapping into the needs of the Chinese market, Asian market, there's no way for those markets to trust what New Zealand's creating, because there isn't a domestic framework of regulation around making plants into medicine. What's your thoughts around the regulation of what you're creating, or a way to make sure that it's done in the right way? Because I'm sure there'll be some fast followers that attempt to do what you're doing.
Yeah, so it's a good point. And just to touch on the note around the New Zealand thyme versus other thyme around the world, it's similar to New Zealand blackcurrants. So New Zealand blackcurrants have got higher levels of colour, the antioxidants, than the same variety grown in the European and North American markets. And similar to our pine, our pine grows 3 times faster than in North America, and it has a lot to do with our exposure to UV and our soil and climate. The higher the UV, the more the plant has to express its polyphenols and antioxidants to protect itself against the UV, which gives us these kind of supercharged foods. So New Zealand really is on the global stage a world-class producer of produce. And I guess from the regulatory point of view, we are trying to stick and focus our efforts towards food-based products, food and beverage products. And so we fall under a different category of legislation. It is very hard currently for New Zealand natural products to scientifically prove their efficacy and be able to have claims on their products and on their websites, and that are then accepted into international markets. It takes a lot of kind of local knowledge around the regulatory framework to understand how to actually navigate it, and it really is market by market. But what I know from the food legislation front is that New Zealand food law is really is of a high standard. And so if we can prove a claim through a self dossier, which is what we're working on at the moment, then that framework is essentially similar to the guidelines in Europe and in, say, Japan, who are kind of like the two top, from a regulatory point of view, markets. And so our goal is to go through the New Zealand framework and then have a really good dossier of evidence to then take into other markets. But for the likes of, and New Zealand and Australia share the same relationship, but same framework. But say for the US, it's a lot more, you're a lot more free, or it's a different framework, and it's a lot, you just have to be careful about what you say and be prepared that if you kind of step beyond your claim, be prepared that someone's going to take you to court and sue you. So you just have to be really confident about your science and back your claims up with science so that you are able to say what you want to say. But it really is horses for courses, and it totally depends on the market. But our strategy is to do more and more science so that we have a really defendable position. And then our other defendable position is our unique to New Zealand ingredients and the patent of the combination of those unique to New Zealand ingredients, and the fact that we're the only ones that are able to make these products using these ingredients because of the vertical integration that we have. So we're trying to go to market with a number of different barriers to stop the bigger players, quickly following.
I love the story, and I think what you're doing is great work, because it moves us away from a society where the beverage you get at the supermarket historically, and this is still true today, it's a sugar-based system. So the sugar's there's various flavors of sugar, and they're not necessarily the best products for humans over a longer period of time. And I think the research on that around sugar was probably undecided mid-20th century, and it's now far more conclusive towards the negative than the positive. And it plays to our natural strengths as what we've got in New Zealand, the native ingredients. And I think that's a great thing as well. Where did the name Ārepa come from? What's the meaning of that name?
So it's pronounced Ārepa.
Ārepa.
And Ārepa is te reo Māori for alpha, as in the alpha brainwave. And alpha brainwaves are deemed by psychologists as the state of flow, or the zone. So a bunch of neuroscientists and psychologists in America studied a whole bunch of elite athletes and artists, and found that whenever they were performing their skill, at their very best with the least amount of effort, but the most amount of results, they had this similar brainwave pattern, and they looked closely into it, and it all was on this alpha brainwave spectrum. So essentially, we now know what the zone looks like, and it has something to do with having higher amounts of this alpha brainwave activity. And so our beverage aims to get you into that state using these powerful natural ingredients. And we wanted to call it something that was unique to New Zealand, because there's not many countries in the world that combine both languages on a daily basis. Like we would say kia ora. And so we really loved the name Ārepa, and it really represented what the beverage does, but also what we want to be and what we want to achieve, becoming the best and becoming the world's smartest beverage and becoming the world's #1 brain health and performance brand. And so that's where we get the name from, and we're incredibly proud to represent that.
It's the gift of culture that Aotearoa and New Zealand has been given, and what you keep coming back to is, how do you create something that's globally unique, not just New Zealand unique, so that over time, although there will be copiers, you create something that links back to that only one country can do, and that creates a good defensive position globally as those competitors start to arrive. And I like how you've brought in the Māori knowledge side of it, because it embraces that culture that was here far before Westerners arrived a couple of hundred years ago.
Yeah, it celebrates our indigeneity, I think, and yeah, we really love it. And the A for us is so powerful, and yeah, we're really honoured and proud to represent that.
When I'm thinking day to day, how much do you actually get high on your own supply, like of your own nootropics? Like I know that I probably don't drink enough water on a daily basis, and so I put a 2-litre bottle next to me at my desk at work, and my job is to make sure that I get through that during a day. Is water enough? Is part of it just a hydration problem that you're solving, or is it that combo that actually changes the way you perceive things? And the reason I'm asking is that through these interviews I certainly get that flow state, and it's usually about 15 or 20 minutes in, where there's a real link. There's no other distractions around. We're all set up. There's just a one-to-one conversation, and I've done almost 300 of these interviews over the last 5 years. So it's
Nice.
not a difficult thing to do. It's quite an enjoyable thing. I'm just wondering now, if I take Ārepa over the next, let's say, 4 weeks and replace that 2-litre bottle of water, I wonder what the felt effect is going to be for someone that already feels that flow state.
Yeah, so we say, like a board member and investor has got a saying that he's kind of forced onto us, and we agree, is that if you want to hydrate, drink water, but if you want to be on your A game and be calm and think clear under that moment of pressure, then drink Ārepa. So we think, I think, you absolutely must, continue to drink water and stay hydrated. It's imperative. What we are offering and creating and almost delivering is a very, very high concentration of plant polyphenols, which are the antioxidants. But it's like the color and what makes up the really true health benefits within fruits and vegetables. We have kilogram equivalents of fresh fruit and vegetables, concentrated down into a single bottle or, a teaspoon of powder. And yeah, they really do impose a benefit to those who have a high stress environment and, need to perform under fatigue or stress or anxiety. And to answer your question, whether I get high off my own supply, I would have, if I do probably a smoothie, I'd say, every second day. And so I would use, a couple of teaspoons of this powder, which is our freeze-dried equivalent ingredients. And like literally some of the highest source of color, which is anthocyanins and vitamin C out of any fruit kind of, grown commercially on this planet. And then a unique select kind of combination of, we call it nootropics or brain food, that impart a performance benefit and then a long-term neuroprotective benefit. So I would have that, and then whenever I get my hands on a drink and it's cold, I would have one of these before I had a really big day, whether that was presenting at a conference or often when we're selling at food shows and expos, you're on your feet talking to thousands of people, over a very, very long, without a break, 8-hour period. And so I'd have one then or before, a round of golf. And then I would probably consume, but the product or format I would consume the most would be our capsules. And I still love that morning coffee, but I get quite affected by the caffeine. And I try to lay off, but there is something ritual about having a hot drink, especially on a winter's day, with a friend in a nice cafe. And so I would take 2 of our capsules with that coffee, and that helps to counter that jitteriness and that kind of nervousness that you get from caffeine, and it allows for the best of both worlds. So I'd have the capsules on almost a daily basis, and then the powder or the beverage, powder would be every second day, and then the drink would be, every third day, whether I can get my hands on it. Most of the time, we're literally out of stock, and every last bottle goes out to customers. So, which is a premium problem, but I often find that I constantly open up my own fridge at home, and I'm going, God, I don't even have any of my own product in my own fridge,
I think just listening to some of the examples you've given, I think probably where I'd use it, because this fits with what I already do, is when we do these interviews every Wednesday and Friday, I'm quite conscious about what I eat in the hours prior, and my breakfast on that day is actually salmon, broccoli. I'll do some lemon over the broccoli. That's
all brain food?
Yep. No carbs. Then if I'm getting hungry, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, an hour before interviews, just a handful of almonds that keeps it going. A lot of water. Maybe 1.5 coffees. Getting into, the 4 shots of coffees becomes then a problem, because I'm too wired up to actually have the chat.
Sleep either.
Yeah. And having a good night's sleep beforehand. In my previous role, when I was traveling around Europe doing sales for a telecoms company, I always found that the travel part actually determined the success of the meeting. If it was good travel and you weren't exhausted when you got there, or it wasn't your third meeting, then it was more likely to go well. And I know I used that with One Above when they used to do the jet lag product. I had a flight to New York. I had a meeting straight after with Seth Godin. I wanted to make sure I was on performance, and just had a couple of those. And I don't know whether it was just the hydration or what was in it. I didn't really care. I just knew that I turned up at that meeting 21 hours later and I was on. Probably some of it was excitement as well. So maybe I think my commitment to you as part of this interviewing process is, I'll do this for a Wednesday and a Friday, is try Ārepa in the morning before the interviews and see what that felt effect is, because there's nothing to lose from it, right?
Yeah, and please let us know. It'd be interesting to see, whether you are a responder, because a lot of people, there are responders and then there are non-responders, and you sound like you run a pretty nice clean diet, and you would be able to manage your stress effectively. So you'll be a lot healthier, but you may not feel something instantaneously, and you might look back and be like, well, actually I actually had a really good day, and it was actually something did work. We have one investor who still can't feel anything from us, but he swims in the Wellington harbour 6 a.m. every day all throughout winter without a wetsuit. He's an absolute machine. So his brain, and he's semi-retired, so his brain is not exactly running a high stress type of operation, but I'll be happy to send some down and let you trial it for yourself, because you do seem to be running a busy schedule and punching out these podcasts.
The idea is to do 3 or 4 a week, and I do all of at least the audio side, the editing personally myself, so that it preserves the message or the intent, and then Hugo is my right hand man to do all the video editing. So maybe in some of his stress moments coming up with some of the editing he's got to balance with some of the other work, we'll send some his way as well.
Nice.
Angus, you've been generous with your time today. What question haven't I asked you, or what topics haven't we covered that maybe I should have asked you about?
It's really just, I guess, what's the goal of your podcast, and what do you want to talk about, or where do you what's the end goal of this, and the companies, where they're going. I mean, probably it'd just be like, I guess, sales and where the business is going, I'd say, that we probably haven't covered. But it totally depends on like what the purpose is and what, how you create your podcast. So completely up to you.
The subject of the podcast is uniquely Kiwi stories, which certainly Ārepa qualifies in. And the second part is contributing to New Zealand's future, and that's key. I think a business that has a positive foot forward like yours, that wants people to either A, perform better, or in a compromised brain environment, at least get better performance out of the brain that they've got, that's something that contributes, right? Like my grandfather had Alzheimer's. Maybe this would work, maybe it wouldn't, but at least there's a product there to try. And I think the more focus and the more airtime that's given to organizations, even early stage, even ones that the mass may say, this is crazy, it can't work, because those are the ones that usually make it work. And those are the places that I like to explore, because I think there's interesting and hidden things that come up from that. Also, there's the selfish aspect. Like I get to learn directly from the business, and so hearing you speak today, I'm putting two to two together with Dr. Sandra Clare with the time research that she's done, and thought,
Artemis.
Yeah, Artemis. Wow, this the NZ Grown label could be something that becomes an indicator, a geographical indicator of something that's a more potent single component ingredient. So it feeds into some of the broader work with NZ Made. Thank you for your time today, Angus, and I'm going to get some of that product to try and report back. I think you're doing a wonderful job. I saw you, I think it was on the AM show, and getting the brand out there. I hope you're well supported by the supermarkets as well. I know it's difficult to get that range space. You've got some very protective incumbent players there, so I hope you're finding a way around that somehow to get the product out there and available.
Yeah, it's been a battle, but we're now ranged in all main New World and Countdown supermarkets. Countdown took us on a month and a half ago, so we're in about 100 Countdown supermarkets, which is really good. But yeah, it's been a bit of a fight. But what the retailers really like about us is that we're not knife fighting, doing another $2 kombucha. We're actually producing a high value functional beverage that delivers on a health effect for consumers, but is also high value, and it kind of brings the value of the category up. And the fact that we're the only one of our kind, somebody brain drinks in New Zealand. But yeah, it's been a battle, but we're I think because we produce this felt effect, we certainly are starting to see some really, really interesting sales. BP have just taken us up on their top 30 Connect sites, and yeah, last night we took out the Startup of the Year award at the Nutri-Ingredients Asia Awards, which is Nutri-Ingredients would be like the top gear of food technology and ingredient technology, and it's based out of Singapore, and we won Startup of the Year for the Asia category. So we're pleased about that, and we have some interesting opportunities ahead of us, and it's because of that science. Just
in between, because you've convinced me on this call, between this one and the next interview, I'll pop out and pick one up locally here and try it out. Look, awesome. I'm glad you've gone from the dark side of sugary drinks and energy drinks across to the light side of science-backed nootropic drinks, powders, and it's a different approach to something that I think is needed. And I wish that this happens quite quickly, and that there's less sugary drinks and there's more drinks that have this aspect to it that draws on what we're good at in New Zealand, our native ingredients, and that blackcurrant side of things, and the ability there with the Neuroberry, the trademarked Neuroberry. I think it's fantastic. You're obviously going about this the right way. Probably got some very good mentors and advisors, and to be on this journey for, what did you say, 7 years or 10 years?
It's basically 7 years, but probably most importantly was as a co-founder of mine. So he's been Zach Robinson. So he's yin and I'm yang, and he kind of leads our company through the design space, and he's our kind of head designer of everything, and kind of we kind of create these ideas and work well together. And I think without him, we wouldn't be anywhere. So it's having a co-founder and someone in the roller coaster ride with you for the ups and downs.
Congratulations on getting this far. Congratulations on the award. Look forward to sharing this with the NZ Made audience.
Yeah, cool. I look forward to sharing it too. Appreciate the time, Ryan. Have a great week, and we'll talk soon.
This has been a Kiwi original brought to you by the New Zealand Made team. Thanks for watching. The New Zealand Made trademark is used by over 1,200 businesses in New Zealand. The New Zealand Made team licenses that trademark. Check if you're eligible at bynz.org.nz. If you feel that someone should see this, share it with them now. Otherwise, subscribe to youtube.com/bynzmade, and we'll see you on the next episode.